My name is Imani Henry. I'm 50 years old this year. My pronouns are he, him, and my name. I live in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I think that every tenant in New York, for the most part, has probably had a really horrible slumlord, bad landlord. I think most of us have dealt with evictions or like landlords that don't, do any repairs, supers that are like disrespectful to us. So I want to just say, particularly as an organizer, I live through those same things too. I fight every day for around my own housing, as well as like fighting in Brooklyn to make sure everybody has a right to like a safe, affordable place to live. Public space for me is just being able to walk in my community, in my neighborhood, and feel like no one's going to get murdered by the police, or that unfortunately now that some white racist person who's gentrifying my neighborhood is also going to interrupt the flow of our day, do something disrespectful. But in general, I feel incredibly happy just being in Brooklyn. Unfortunately, I have a slumlord. The thing that happened that I think was really important was that when I first moved into the building, of course, there were lots of services. And I realized later on that my neighbors downstairs was not getting any services. And then after being here for a year, then it then became like a whole other sort of understanding. I could go in to all the violations, but I think the other piece of it too is this. I also believe in movement. I'm very proud of being inside a housing justice movement, a police, abolitionist movement. I'm happy about that, and I feel very safe that people have my back. So when I had lived in a private house, I say this, the last landlord who took me to court ended up apologizing on Facebook, ended up asking to settle out of court because we showed up with 20 people in shirts that said Brooklyn is not for sale. That was actually really fun because the whole courtroom, we had elders that were taking selfies with us. It was just, the courtroom was like, this is lit, right? And of course too, then the lawyer wanted to pretend that I'm a tenant lawyer and why are you treating me this badly? And I think she quit that firm actually afterwards. It was great. We had a demonstration. We shot a film. I don't know if it's going to come out soon. And there was like a whole energy. But the thing that I think is really important is that I didn't talk about it as myself, only to friends, because I really do think it's important that as someone that is an organizer, I want to always instill hope that we're fighting. So we gave us the opportunity to talk about unregulated tenants. And more people came forward to talk about their situation, more videos were taken, and it became like a moment. And actually when we had the little rally, in front of my house that people didn't know was my house, it was really awesome because people came from Manhattan, lawyers came that work at, other nonprofits in the neighborhood, and it really was a moment. People said it was like, we don't talk about unregulated tenants. And places like Flatbush, Bed-Stuy, East Flatbush, Crown Heights, Prospect Heights, Underhill, as it really is called, are full of unregulated tenants. Bushwick are full of unregulated tenants. And so it was great to even talk to neighbors who were like, yeah, I'm a tenant. My landlord lives somewhere else, and these are the things that are happening to me. And this is really, I think it's a really important issue because there's nothing. We have to have solidarity with NYCHA residents and rent-stabilized tenants and rent control and all the other, forms of tenants that are out there. I do think it's really important to really look at the fact that we need a universal rent control for every single person in the city, so there isn't this tiered system, because that's how the displacement. This is why Crown Heights is one of the highest displacement, because there's lots of unregulated tenants as well as rent-stabilized tenants that are also being taken to court. ultimately we have to get rid of capitalism. We can't live in a system that's based on profit. So, if I think about other places like, Cuba, where there's like an understanding that housing is a right. It's not a privilege. Everybody should have it. I remember that they did something, I think it was like the Pan American Games, one of the big giant sporting games, and they built like arena and like sporting housing and all kinds of stuff for this game. And to my knowledge, the first folks that got, when the games were over, the first folks who got to live in that were the workers that built that place. And I think that's, we could talk about Atlanta when the Olympics came. My people got displaced from there. Lots of people got displaced. They gave up their houses. They thought they were going to get to come back, and they weren't. It was a reason to displace them. And that's the difference about living in a capitalist system and living in a system that's built, on the understanding of socialism, as an understanding about people first and not profit. But yeah, that would make me feel much more comfortable. And ultimately, I do really think this is the moment. This is our time to really push forward, to be as political as we want to be, because this is ethnic cleansing. This is permanent displacement. I would say to other folks that are fighting or struggling with landlords, this is the moment to be an activist. You don't have to think, I've never organized before. It's really deep too. I think about families that have been impacted by police murders. They were just living their lives, and something incredibly tragic and violent happened to them, and now they're thrust forward and they're leading. I will quote Eric Vassell, the father of Saeed Vassell. He's made it abundant. He's out in the church communities, he's out in the world. People know him, and he says this all the time. You knew me before, but now that my son has died, this is the new me. I'm gonna get justice for my child. So I think it's really important for people to think, I'm an activist. I think I think join the activist movement. If there's a tenant association in your building, get in it. If you know of a community group, if you live in Harlem, then there's Upper Manhattan's Not For Sale or Met Council. If you're in Bushwick, there's a whole rezoning struggle. Be a part of that. Mi Casa, that's our family out in Bushwick. I think ultimately and the last thing I would just say is really to understand that it just happened at a tenant association meeting last night, is also the understanding that your landlord is purposely trying to isolate you. That's why court is the way it is. That's why, this is a private lease. And people aren't even used to talking about how much they pay in rent. There's even something like, how do you know that you're being overcharged if you don't talk to others? So I think it's really important for people to sort of suppress pride and all that stuff. Come and say, I need help. Join the movement that you see around it. Come to that tenant association, because it happened last night. People feel better when they're like, we're in court? I didn't know that. You're fighting for repairs. You put up this stuff on social media? I'll put this stuff on social media. My landlord is not giving me repairs in this amount of time. Or we can have a demonstration in front of the building. Yes, you can have a demonstration in front of the building. And I think people should really feel let go of this whole very respectability thing around rent. These people are trying to take us out and throw us out of our homes and displace us permanently. They're trying to destroy the economic, cultural, social, political diversity of New York City. We should fight them by any means necessary. So what do I do as an organizer, as a person, to take care of myself, and also what I think is important for community in general? There's a saying in social work about I won't go to a therapist who's not in therapy, and I think it's really important that people find whatever that is that replenishes them. So if that is I'm going dancing tonight, that's for sure. If that is going to therapy, if it is taking a yoga class or going to the gym or I'm going to spend time with my children, I got nieces and nephews that I'm going to go see. whatever it is, because they want to take so much from us. And then we have a right to say, I'm going to take this time for myself. And we also have a right to also, and I want to say it, I'm not a religious person, but I do look at big demonstrations as a spiritual moment. And so sometimes running in the streets for me, taking a political stand, doing a direct action. When we surrounded a slumlord's car in the middle of Empire Boulevard, that was beautiful. That was a beautiful moment. That was healing after all he illegally locked out 2 black elders. That was healing. So that, I just want to say that too, like whatever, fighting back can be self-care. And whatever it is, I think people should just do it and feel free. I won't do this. Walk in the park. Get some sunlight. I think what's most important for folks in the future to have like space, and what's important in general for all, I think, black people in general, queer and trans people in particular, is really to understand that we are being like pushed out of space, and it's like again I mentioned about this is the moment to be an activist. Most people can talk about being in the streets during the Black Lives Matter movement. Think of this as this is the anti-gentrification resistance movement, and that we all should be a part of it. Get your pastor to allow an anti-gentrification or housing activist to speak, at the church or at the synagogue, or whatever your place of work is, at the mosque. This is the moment that we should be talking about gentrification, because it impacts all of us in such a horrible, brutal way. They are trying to take, and this is true, it's already happened. Bed-Stuy and Harlem has lost, a large portion of their black population, Williamsburg, Bushwick, can talk about losing Latinx population. These are strongholds. I want to be even clear, what makes Flatbush is that anybody in the world can start talking about whether they think about reggae music or Caribbean people. That's what they understand. It's the largest enclave of Haitians in the United States. It's here in Brooklyn, particularly East Flatbush. So I think that it's important for folks to really think in this moment, what will Brooklyn be like in 10 years if we don't fight now? What will it mean to be born and raised in Brooklyn? Will we be able to migrate here? Will we have places? Where will the Caribbean Day Parade be? Where will, the understanding of the Puerto Rican Day Parade that has multiple, will we still have Chinatowns in all 3 boroughs? Will that happen if we don't fight? And I particularly think for queer and trans people, this is true across the country. They're closing down bars, they're closing down spaces, parties. I think of Soul Summit that has historically been in Fort Greene Park, and when I was first going to it, it was a black gay space. Black queer people there, and straight black people too, but it's house music, and it was this is our home, and it's diminished and diminished and diminished because it's not every week anymore, and it's not even once a month anymore. And I think that's important. And mad respect to the brothers and sisters that work on Soul Summit and have been fighting to keep it going. But I think it's really important for us to say, whatever's precious and dear to us, this is the moment. Langston's, we're raising, I think they need $70,000. Give to Langston's. Make that go viral. That is the last black-owned LGBTQ space in all of New York. It's the last. This is, we say, before it's gone, take it back. Brooklyn's not for sale. I think if people really think about it, this is ours. And they're trying to take it from us. Just the same way they come up in your house. If someone came up in your house and was like, yo, I'm taking over your toilet. Everybody who are you? I need my bathroom. Get out. I think people should really think about how vital and precious New York is to them. And they're trying to take us out. They want us to move as far away as possible, and this is the moment to take it back, make a stand, because this is all we have, and it's precious, and it's ours.